All right, well, if you've got a Bible today, open up to the book of Ecclesiastes. We're looking at the second chapter of Ecclesiastes today. We're getting into chapter 2, and I'm glad you came back even after last week. I'm really surprised that some of you made it back. I expected all of you to be laying in bed saying, church is not worth it, it's meaningless, I'm staying home today. So I appreciate you coming back and coming and hanging out with me for a little bit. So Ecclesiastes chapter 2, get there. And remember what happened last week. What happened was that Solomon, he's this guy with all of this wealth, all of this money, all of this power. He's got it all. And he says, I'm going to conduct this experiment. And he makes a couple observations. And he looks around and he says, in this life, nothing changes and nothing is new. And so then he asks a question about that. And he says, well, if nothing changes and nothing is new, what is the point of life? And then his hypothesis is that, well, there's not really any. And then his conclusion, the results of it all, are that he's right. There is no meaning. It's all vanity. But again, this is all under the guise that there is nothing there's nothing above the earth. This is all just a worldly perspective under the sun, under heaven, not looking beyond to God. And so what today he's going to do, he's going to go into the experiment phase. Last week we said he couldn't get into it because it takes too long. And you'll see today we're just going to go through 11 verses. And I'm going to try and not just bombard you with information. I'm going to try and provide a steady flow, because what I want to do is I just want to flood you with all of the information that I've read and I've learned from this passage. And it's going to be difficult. But what he's going to do is going to test pleasure first. And he's going to see if there's anything to be found in pleasure. And now, chapter 1, it's all-encompassing. And he says, look, nothing, over everything there is nothing. There's no meaning in any of it. It's all vanity. But now he's going to get into the specifics. And today he's going to pursue pleasure to see if there's meaning in just pure physical pleasure. He's going to try this and try and figure out, and here's how he opens up this passage. And it's really telling what he's going to do. Verse 1, I said in my heart, come now, I will test you with pleasure. Enjoy yourself. It's a nice image. He says, listen, if there's going to be something that is enjoyable for a person to do, Solomon's going to do it. Okay, plain and simple as that. If there is a task, if there's a thing to have, a thing to do, or anything in this life that is enjoyable, that is pleasurable, that is fun, Solomon is going to do it. He's going to try every last aspect of it. And remember last week he said, I'm going to look at it from every angle. I'm going to try this from every perspective. So throughout this, he's going to try and do everything he can to find meaning in pleasure. And he's going to try a lot of different pleasurable things. And today we're going to look at 3 specific things. But here's a spoiler alert before we get into it. It's all meaningless. Here's the second part of verse 1. He says, come, enjoy yourself, have a good time, find pleasure. But behold, this also was vanity. And I said of laughter, it is mad, it is madness. It makes someone crazy because there's no real meaning in it. It's just laughter. And of pleasure, what use is it? And the answer is none. The spoiler for this message, if you're curious, is that there is no meaning, there is no purpose in pleasure. Now, let me tell you, what he's going to talk about today, what he's going to go through, and what he records in Ecclesiastes, it is all good. It is all fun. It is all enjoyable. It is all pleasurable. And you and I enjoy these things. But the thing is, if you're looking for meaning in those things, like Solomon did, it's not going to show you any meaning. And we're going to be tempted, especially in our 21st century where everything is so readily accessible and so easy to get to, we're going to be tempted to try these things and see, oh, I wonder if there's meaning in that. And it's easier to get more and more and more, and we're going to try this, and we're going to see if there's any meaning and pleasure. And Solomon says, no, I've already been there. I've already done that. I've done more than you can think of. I've done more than you're even able to. So trust me on this one. It's not worth it. It's all vanity. And so we're going to get into these 3 different things that he tested, 3 different things that Solomon, with all of his wisdom, all of his wealth, and all of his power, he's going to apply that to pleasure, and he's going to find out the results that it's all meaningless. So here's the first thing that he tested, and he's going to test parties. He's just going to get a big group together. He's going to come hang out with a bunch of people, and they're going to have a big get-together, have a lot of food, a lot of wine, and just enjoy each other's company and have the best bands there. They're going to have comedians there. It's just going to have a good time and just have everybody get together and just hang out. And there's a reason that we get together once a week. It's because I kind of like you guys, and I hope you kind of like me too. And everybody, you guys like each other as well. That's why we get together once a week. That we enjoy being around other people. It is a good thing. And so Solomon says, look, I like humans. I like hanging out with other humans, so I'm going to try that. I'm just going to get a bunch of people together, and if that doesn't work, I'm going to get more. And if that doesn't work, I'm going to get more and more and more and more. And what he's going to do is he's going to try it and find no meaning, and then he's going to try a little bit bigger and a little bit bigger and bigger and bigger. He's going to have a party every night of the week. You hear me? Every single night of the week. You know, you guys know, you ever been to a party? Don't nod your head yes. Just know, you know what I'm talking about when people have parties and there's a lot of drinking and there's just loud music and it's a good time. But you know what that's normally reserved for? Friday or Saturday night, right? I mean, that's normally the night of the week. But Solomon, what he's going to do is, I'm going to have a party on Monday night, Tuesday night, Thursday, Wednesday, Saturday. Every night of the week, if a day ends in white, I'm having a party, we're drinking, we're eating a lot of food. It's going to be a good time. Every single night of the week. And what is going to happen is he's going to have a party for a week, every single night, and then he's going to go, well, that didn't really work. I didn't really find any meaning in that. So he's just going to go bigger. And so the next week, he's going to have even more people, even more food, even more junk going on, and he's going to realize that's not really worth it. And so then the week after that, he's going to go bigger. The week after that, he's going to go bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, all until he comes to this conclusion that it's all meaningless. Here's what he says, verse 3, Ecclesiastes 2:3. I searched with my heart how to cheer my body with wine. Let's go have a party. Let's go drink wine. And first of all, wine, can we just have a side tangent on this? Like, I know you guys don't really like to talk about alcohol, and I know that with the law passing or whatever it was with alcohol being sold here, whatever. Here's the deal. God made alcohol. I mean, can I just tell you that? God did not say, hey, you ruined the grapes. No, this is something that God did. Now, he does later on say, don't be an idiot about it. Can I say that? God says, don't be an idiot about it. Don't get drunk with it. But this is an enjoyable thing. And Solomon says, look, God made this. It's enjoyable. I'm going to try it. And so he says, I searched how to cheer my heart with wine, how to cheer my body with wine. My heart's still guiding me with wisdom. He says, I'm never losing sight of my end goal. I'm trying to find meaning. So through this, he's not getting lost in the pleasure. He's not getting belligerent about his pursuit, but he is always has his mind, has his eyes on the end goal of finding meaning. And he says, I'm going to see if wine will do that and how to lay hold of folly. Just have a good time. Just do whatever. Who cares? Until I might see what was good for the children of man to do under heaven during the few days of their life. That's the happy Solomon right there, the few days of your life. You don't have much time on this life, so you might as well have a good time. Anybody else with me right there? We're not here forever, so while we're here, we might as well enjoy it. And that's what Solomon says. I'm going to get everybody together, we're going to have a party, and we're going to have a good time. Now, if you think that Solomon, oh yeah, he had some parties, but did he really have I've been to some parties. Has he been on the level that we've been at? Now, here's the deal. I'm going to look at 1 Kings quite a bit today. So if you're going to have a thumb in the back or you got the notes up here or on your phone, whichever, we're going to look at a little bit in 1 Kings because that gives us the history of what Solomon does. So here it is. Here's 1 Kings chapter 4, verse 22 and 23. And this tells us how much substance that Solomon and his friends go through in a day, in one single day. Here it is. 1 Kings chapter 4, verses 22 and 23. Solomon's provisions for one day, for one single day, and how big of a party he has. This is it. He had 30 cores of fine flour. You know what a core is? 220 liters. So just try to imagine and quantify that. That's for a single day. 30 cores of fine flour, 60 cores of meal, 10 fat oxen, 20 pasture-fed cattle, 100 sheep, besides 100 deer, besides 100 gazelles, besides 100 roebucks, and besides 100 fattened fowl. Can anybody eat that much food in one day? Do you know how many people it has to be able to eat that much food? That's a lot of people. Now, one year when I was a little kid, my dad bought from a friend or a neighbor, I don't remember who it was, but he bought half of a cow. And there's 6 of us, there's 4 kids, 2 parents, 6 of us, we're going to try and eat half of a cow in 1 year. Now, I think we still have some of that cow in the freezer. I mean, we never got through that cow. Do you know how much food is on a cow? And what Solomon says, he says, well, I got 20 of them. I got 20 cows every single day, in addition to all those sheep, in addition to all those deer. He's got it all. If there is a food out there that he wants to try, he's going to try it. If there is a drink out there that he's heard of that he wants to drink, he's going to try it. If there's somebody, he's going to invite him. He's going to have a party. Now, here's an estimate about how many people attended Solomon's parties every single day. Remember that? This is every single day for about 2 decades. Because all of this is going on in 1 Kings, if you read on in that next couple chapters, you realize that during this time that Solomon's having all these parties, having all these get-togethers, he's building the Lord's temple, and he's building his own houses, and he's building the houses for his wives. It's 20 years, people. 20 years, Solomon goes, I'm going to party it up. My 20s are going to last 2 decades. That's what Solomon says. He's like, I'm going to try it all. I'm going to do everything. And every single one of those nights, the estimates for amount of people that are at the parties are at the low end, 10,000 people, more people that are in this town, and at the high end, 50,000 people. Do you know how many people attend a World Series game that just got done? It's about 50,000. Now that is a rare event. It's a big spectacle. It is a big get-together. And Solomon said, that's child's play. I did that every single night of the week for decades. I've tried it. I've done it. It's done and gone, and listen, Solomon has done everything, has tried everything, and if there is a get-together, a party that has been done, Solomon's was bigger, was better, and was more fancy, and had more lights, and he says, it's all vanity. There's no point to it. There's no meaning to be found in it. There's no limits that Solomon has, and he goes bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, and every single time that he goes bigger, he realizes it can't be big enough. And every time he goes one step further, he realizes it's not enough. No matter how big the party is, it is not enough to bring Solomon fulfillment. It is not enough to bring Solomon any meaning. And he's left with the same question, what's the point? And so if parties are not the answer, he's going to move on to something else. He's going to try something else while he's doing that. He's going to continue to party for a while just to see, just to really make sure make sure there's no meaning in it. And while he's doing that, he's going to try a couple other things. He's going to try doing some other things, and he's going to test, instead of parties, he's going to test production. He's going to try and make as much as he can. He says, I'm going to build this, I'm going to make that, I'm going to do everything that there is. I'm going to work with my hands, and I'm going to see if that brings meaning. I'm going to see if that brings satisfaction to my soul. And he's still partying, but in the day, he's going out and he's working. Partying at night, working all day. And Solomon's going to try it all. And Solomon, he's commissioned by God to build the temple, right? David wanted to build the temple, but God said, no, I'm going to leave that for your son. And so Solomon comes around, and he spends 7 years building God's temple. This ornate, there's gold, and it's flashy, and it's beautiful. It is magnificent to behold. It is incredibly beautiful. And Solomon says, I enjoyed that. I got some satisfaction. I felt good when building that. Now, anybody ever built something with your own hands or carved a stick into a sharper stick and that's fun. I like that. I feel good about that. Solomon, he's going to try it. He's going to try and build everything there is, bigger and better. And another spoiler alert, he's not going to find any meaning in producing all of these things. Look at verse 4. I made great works. I built houses. Now, after he gets done building the temple of the Lord for 7 years, now this church, this building that we're in right here, it was built in about a year or two. Now, imagine the temple of the Lord that takes 7 years to build. That's a big building. That's a lot of time. But then what happens is this. In 1 Kings chapter 7, he's going to do this. 1 Kings chapter 7, verse 2, and then verses 6, 7, and 9. He built the house of the forest of Lebanon, and his length was this and this and this. And then verse 6, and he made the hall of pillars. And then verse 7, and he made the hall of the throne, and his house where he was to dwell, in the other court, and the back hall. And it just goes on and it describes everything. But look back to verse 1. Solomon was building his own house 13 years, and he finished his entire house. Solomon spent 7 years on the house of God and then said, I'm going to spend 13 on mine. And it just shows where the focus of Solomon's life is at. I'm going to bring my self-pleasure. And he spends 13 years building a building. Anybody built something for 13 years? Yeah, I just can't imagine how big and how ornate and how beautiful and how much of a spectacle this was. Solomon said, I've built bigger, I've built better than you, and it means nothing. All of my houses, and also on this, Solomon had a bunch of wives, like 700 wives. Hundreds of wives. Can you imagine having that many women that you had to take care of? And Solomon, what does he do? He builds a house for each of them. And he builds 700 houses for all of his wives, plus his own house, plus all these other buildings that are monuments to Israel. And he's just flashy and just flaunting how much he can produce. And he's saying that there is no meaning in it. And whenever you build something or you finish something, even just on a small level, you give a little kid a Lego box for Christmas, and he builds the Millennium Falcon from Star Wars out of Legos, and he's got this sense of accomplishment. He's proud of what he did. Solomon did that on the grandest and the greatest and on the biggest scale. And he says, there's no meaning in that. There's a little bit of accomplishment, but there's nothing really to it. And now he goes on and he builds bigger and better and crazier things. Here's the next part of verse 4 and then verse 5 as well. And he said, I made great works, I built houses, and I planted vineyards for myself. I made gardens and parks and planted in them all kinds of fruit trees. Now, we got Shawnee National Forest, and it's pretty down there. It is gorgeous. We've got Yellowstone National Park. It is pretty. It is gorgeous. We've got Glacier National Park. It is pretty. It is gorgeous. You know what Solomon said? Hey, those are all national parks. I built those for myself. I've got national park after national park that nobody else is allowed to go into except for myself. And I didn't just find that and then declare it. No, I built it. I planted the trees. I grew the trees. I did it all myself. And it's all my handiwork, and it's just for my pleasure. It's guarded off. He's got fences around it. Nobody else is allowed to go in. And he says, I built it. I'm proud of it. And there's no meaning. And there's there's no meaning. It's vanity in them all. And Solomon knew this. And he knew what was going on. And he's trying to build bigger and bigger and more. And you remember the whole party scene? He's saying, well, I'm running out of wine. Better build some vineyards. Better plant some vineyards. Better make my own wine. And he keeps just building more and more. And this is a sense of accomplishment he thinks is going to give him some hope, give him some meaning, and it doesn't. And while he's building all this, you got to have water to be able to feed, all of these trees, right? All of these plants and all this stuff. And it's kind of a desert out there, So water's not super reliant out there, or you can't really rely on the rain. So what does he do? He builds a reservoir. Here's verse 6. And I made myself pools from which to water the forest of the growing trees. Now, John and Denise Duncan, where are they at? Right there, hiding in the back. You guys got a cute pond out there. How long is it going to take to fill up? Solomon built 3 of them, and bigger than yours, and better than yours. No offense to your pond, but they're better. I mean, they're bigger, they're prettier, and you could go to Israel, and you can actually go to the site where 3 of these ponds are allegedly, there's some discrepancy or whatever. There's some disagreement on whether or not Solomon built them or not, but there's 3 of these pools built back to back, and they are, let me see here, 580 feet long by 200 wide by 50 feet deep. That's the biggest of them. Now, that is a giant, that is not a pond, that is a lake. He built himself a lake for the fun of it. And he said, I need water to water my plants. I'm going to build this giant lake. I'm going to swim in. I'm going to have a good time. And I'm going to produce all of this stuff. And he's going to come to the conclusion that there is no meaning behind it. And if you read that passage, he's going to say things like, I made, I built, I planted. Those are pretty boring words, if you ask me. I made this, I made that, Instead, he said, I constructed this, I intricately placed this here and there and there. If you're really proud of something, you're going to describe it in great detail. But Solomon says, no, I made that, I built that, and I planted that. And it's just a boring voice. Like it doesn't bring any satisfaction. It doesn't bring any pride to his life. And he's bored with it. And he says, yeah, whatever. I built it, but it's no big deal. Now, you can keep adding on to your house. You can keep digging ponds. You can keep building bigger barns. But no matter how big you go, no matter how fancy you go, Solomon said, I've been there, I've done that, and there's no meaning in it. Learn from him. Learn from Solomon. No matter how big you want to build, no matter how fancy you want to show off, he's just chasing his tail. It's vanity. It's chasing after the wind, trying to bottle up wind, and he can't do it. And so he tests parties, and there's no meaning. And he tests production and just making everything that he can, and there's no meaning. And then this last one, he's going to test his own possessions. He says, listen, I've tried doing everything, having a big party. I've tried making things. Now I'm going to try and collect things and see if I have some pride in being a hoarder. Now, have you guys seen that show, Hoarders, or whatever the other ones? And the house has got junk everywhere, and there's probably millions of dollars of stuff in there. Solomon says, I'm going to collect it all. I'm going to get them all. I'm going to get all of the cards. I'm going to collect all 10 and turn them in and get the biggest prize. I'm going to get everything. I'm going to do it all. I'm going to have everything that there is to have. And now, Solomon, he inherited a lot of his wealth because he's the king of Israel. You're going to be a wealthy guy if you're the king of Israel. But then, because of Solomon's wisdom and because of Solomon's fame, kings from all these other nations are coming to Solomon and paying him money to give them wisdom, and paying him money and giving him gold and giving him silver and just pouring on him all of this additional wealth just to get a little bit of insight from the wisest man who ever lived. And Solomon just keeps collecting. He says, yeah, bring it on, bring it on. I want more and more. Go ahead and collect it, put it down in the storehouses. I want it all. Check out verse 7. I bought male and female slaves and slaves who were born in my house. I had also great possessions of herds and flocks, more than any who had been before me in Jerusalem. So what he's saying is, I've tried doing it all for myself and it didn't work, so now I'm going to sit back in a lazy chair and have them feed grapes to me and fan me with the palm leaves and do nothing. I'm not going to lift a hand to cut my own fingernails. I'm going to let somebody else do that. If I've got to do something, if I need something done, if I need to eat something, I'm going to have somebody do it for me. If I cannot, if doing it yourself doesn't bring you any pleasure, doesn't bring you any lasting fulfillment, I'm going to have somebody else do it. So he's got slaves, and he buys so many slaves, and he's ruler for so long and collects so many slaves and so much wealth that these slaves begin to have kids, as people do. And then these kids are born into his household, and there's this whole new economic group, this whole new people group that are born in his household, all because he owns them, because he says, just do everything for me. And he just relaxes and enjoys life. And he says, do everything for me. And he collects all of this wealth. And he says, I've got more flocks than anybody else has ever had in their life. I've got more stuff. I've got more slaves. I have it all. And I'm doing everything. And the spoiler is, it's all meaningless. There is no point behind it. And here's, how about this? Do you guys know Bob Batdorf? Do you know Bob Batdorf? He's a guy that goes to my dad's church. And the man collects Corvettes. Do you know how wealthy you got to be able to collect Corvettes? I mean, I've been to his garage and I've seen the different Corvettes that he collects. He's got they were first built in 57, right? And he doesn't have the 57, but he's got the 67, the 77, not the 87 because they didn't make them. And then he's got the 97, he's got the 2007, and he's got 3 or 4 on top of that, and he's got a couple Challengers, he's got a couple Porsches. He's got a lot of cars, let me tell you. His hobby is buying wrecked cars, redoing them, and selling them back. That's how my dad got his Porsche, by the way. He says, I'm going to collect all these cars. Bob Batdorf, he's got a lot of money. He's going to collect all the cars. You know what Solomon says? He laughs at Bob Batdorf. He says, I've got Porsches, I've got Corvettes, I've got Ferraris, I've got Lamborghinis, I've got Bugattis, I've got Rolls Royces. I have every kind of car that's ever been made from all time. Your child's play, your little dinky collection is nothing. Solomon is going to collect it all. He's going to get everything, buy everything, and have everything. And he says it's all meaningless. It's all vanity. And here he adds this on top of that. I also gathered for myself silver and gold and treasure of kings and provinces. If there is a trinket that is worth anything, I'm going to take it. If there is a precious metal in the world, Solomon is going to have it. And it's not just so much that it's from Israel, it's a whole nation. They've got a lot of money. They've got a lot of wealth. But he says, I've got enough wealth for Israel and these neighboring country and that neighboring country. I've got wealth of kings and of provinces. All of these surrounding nations, they have less money than me. All of them combined, I have more wealth than all of them. Solomon is so proud of this, and he says, look at everything that I've collected, all to be found out that it's just vanity, that it's meaningless and brings no meaning, and brings no fulfillment. Now here's 1 Kings chapter 10, verse 21 and then verse 27. Just to give you an idea of how much money Solomon has, here's what it says. All King Solomon's, I got to get there myself, all King Solomon's drinking vessels were made of gold. And all the vessels of the house of the forest of Lebanon were of pure gold. None were of silver, because silver was considered nothing. It was not considered as anything in the day of Solomon. And then later on in this passage, and the king made silver as common in Jerusalem as stone. Listen, stone isn't even as common as stone, and Solomon makes silver more common than that. He says if you look around and you see something, it's more likely to be silver than it is to be stone. That's how much money Solomon has. He says, look around. Look around you. Every single thing, every piece of wallpaper on the wall is a $50 bill because that's chump change. You got nothing on Solomon. He's got more money, more wealth, more stuff than anybody has ever had in the history of mankind, and we cannot even fathom how much he has. And he keeps collecting things and stuff and possessions. Here's verse 8 as well, the second half now. And I got singers, both men and women. He says, I'm going to be entertained. While I'm relaxing and I'm collecting gold and people are feeding me grapes, I want my ears to be tickled, so I'm going to bring in male and female singers, the best singers in the world, and they're going to come blow my ears away with how good they are. Now, anybody like a band? Anybody have a particular band that you like more than other bands? Somebody tell me yes. Have you ever bought a CD for that band because you like them so much? You know what Solomon says? He's like, I really like this song, so I'm going to buy the band. And so he buys the band and he brings them into the temple and he says, you're my personal concert venue. You're going to sing for me every single day at all my parties. You're going to be the entertainment at the parties. You're going to be singing. You're going to have a good time. You're going to make everybody enjoy your voice. And he throws these parties and enjoys these singers, and he also realizes that it's all vanity. And there's one last thing that he says he collected, and it's this: and I got many concubines, the delight of the sons of man. He says, Solomon has 700 wives. You know how many concubines he has? He has 300 concubines. And now, in case you're curious, a concubine is a female slave dedicated to the sexual pleasure of the king. That's what a concubine is. And he says, no matter how, can I just get really real with you for a second? No matter how disturbing and how bizarre whatever is out there on the internet, whatever it is, whatever, Solomon says, I have women dedicated to that. If there is something to enjoy, some pleasure to be had in the sexual realm, Solomon has tried it. No matter what it is, no matter how big, how small, whatever, Solomon has tried it. And that's all I'm going to say about that, because I don't want to make you feel any more awkward. Solomon has done it. Solomon has tried it. Solomon has collected all of the cards. And 1 Kings 11:3 says, I had 700 wives, 300 concubines. If there's something to be enjoyed, I enjoyed it. That's what Solomon tells you. And sex in our culture is pretty prevalent, but Solomon says, you got nothing on me. No matter what your TV has, no matter what your phone says, no matter what you observe out there in the world, Solomon has more, has greater, has better than anything that you can think. He says, I've done it, I've more than that. Now, to give you an example of this, Hugh Hefner just died recently, just a few weeks ago or whatever. Solomon, if he saw the Playboy Mansion, he would laugh. He said, I've got 1,000 women. You got nothing on me, Hugh. Hugh Hefner's got nothing on Solomon. Solomon, if there's something to be had, something to be done, Solomon has done it. And Solomon pursued these different pleasures, these parties, and these possessions, and these productions, and just doing all of these things, and he finds out that it's no meaning in them. Here's Ecclesiastes 2:9. So I became great, and I surpassed all who were before me in Jerusalem. He says, listen, I've done it all. I've had everything. I am the greatest. Listen, if you do not think that Solomon did it all, trust me, Solomon did it all. And he said, I've become greater than everybody else. All my wisdom remained with me. Remember, he's got his goal. His goal is to find meaning, to find purpose, and he's never losing focus of that. He's always focusing on finding pleasure, and he never loses that. And he's searching for lasting meaning, and each time he's left looking for more and more and more. Here's verses 10 and 11. Whatever my eyes desired, I did not keep from them. I kept my heart from no pleasure, from my heart found pleasure in all my toil. And here's the point, comma, and this was my reward for all my toil. You know what his reward is for all of his pleasure, all of the things that he has done, all of the things that he has collected, all of the things that you can imagine? You know what his result is? The reward is, it's just that. It's just fleeting, temporary pleasure. It is not fulfilling. It does not bring any fulfillment, any lasting meaning to his life. And here's why. I'm jumping ahead here, but we'll get to this in a couple weeks. Ecclesiastes 3:11. Then I considered all that my hands, I got past that one. And also he put eternity into man's heart. You see, Solomon, he realizes that God has put this eternal hole in our hearts. At the fall, whenever Adam and Eve sinned, they had this perfect relationship with God. But whenever they fall and they're broken away, there is this bottomless pit in their heart that cannot be filled with all of this junk, all of these pleasures, all of the parties, all of the possessions, all of the work. None of it is enough to fill this hole. And Solomon calls that eternity. Do you know how to fill eternity? You can't. You cannot fill eternity. With stuff and things and doing these, it cannot be filled. He says there is a void in our hearts and our souls that cannot be filled with all of these parties, that cannot be filled with all of these possessions, and that cannot be filled no matter how much work you do, no matter how much accomplishment you have done. You cannot fill it. And we try to fill it with our parties and with our money and with sex and with alcohol and with drugs and with anything. And you know what it leaves us with is even more realization of how big this chasm is, how big this hole is in our hearts, that no matter how much things we pour into it, we only realize that it's so much greater. And that's why Solomon goes bigger and bigger and bigger. No matter how big the party is, he realizes, oh, there's still more to be filled in my heart. And so he goes bigger. And there's still more to be filled in my heart, so he goes bigger. And if parties didn't work, I'm going to try something else. And I'm going to try something else. And he goes bigger and bigger and trying different things, trying to see if it brings any pleasure, only to realize that this hole cannot be filled by mankind. We go bigger and bigger, looking for meaning, but we never find it. Now here's the deal. You guys can't get away with this. You guys can't get away with Solomon did because Solomon recorded his adventures. Solomon recorded his explorations, and he recorded his experiments, and so you know better. You and I know better than to try and fill this void in our hearts with those things. Solomon says if you do that, it's called sin, by the way. And we cannot fill things with our heart, and we need to learn from Solomon. And I'm going to read a verse out of the Gospel of John. And here's the situation. Jesus, he's walking along, and he and his disciples, they go through this country that nobody in their social class would go through. They're Jews from Judea, and they go through Samaria, where Jews do not go. And they go through, and the disciples go on to find some food. And it's midday. It's the hottest time of the day in the desert. And Jesus goes to this well, and he has a seat. And there's this woman who comes out. This woman that nobody associates with. This woman that nobody wants to be friends with because of what she's done, because of her sexual past. And nobody wants to be friends with her. Nobody wants to be seen with her. And Jesus comes, and he says, hey, give me a drink of water. She says, well, don't you have a cup? How are you going to get a drink without a cup? And they talk about water for a little bit. And then Jesus says this. Here's John 4, verses 13 through 14. Jesus said to her, everyone who drinks of this water, this physical water, will be thirsty again. No matter how much stuff you put in the void in your heart, you will want more. You will need more. You will be thirsty again. But whoever drinks of the water that I will give him will never be thirsty again. That says that Jesus Christ is the only thing eternal enough, big enough to fill the void that is in our hearts that we are longing to be filled. This eternity that God has placed in our hearts, Jesus Christ is the only one who can fill that. Jesus Christ is the only one who can bring us satisfaction. Now, if you guys want to come up and play, I'm going to read a little excerpt from a book of C.S. Lewis. In his book, The Weight of Glory, he talks about this void in our hearts. And here's what he says. Indeed, if we consider the unblushing promises of reward and the staggering nature of the rewards promised in the gospel, it would seem that our Lord finds our desires not too strong, but too weak. What C.S. Lewis is saying is that whenever you're trying to find meaning in all this stuff, you're not trying too hard, you're not trying hard enough. He says, you're not going too far, you're not taking it to a next step. He says, no, you haven't taken it to the next step yet. You're still stuck in third gear, and you need to shift over to fifth gear and find God. And he closes with this famous quote, they're not seeking hard enough. We are half-hearted creatures, fooling about with drink and sex and ambition when infinite joy is offered us, like an ignorant child who wants to go on making mud pies in a slum because he cannot imagine what is meant by the offer of a holiday at sea. We are too easily pleased. Christ offers you and I meaning. And if we're just searching in the mundane stuff of life and in parties and in pleasures and these things, these temporary things, we will find we're not searching hard enough. Jesus says, I am the only one who can fulfill your need. I'm the only one who can bring you meaning. So search for Jesus Christ.